Hello and welcome to my storybook cottage, and thank you so much for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about hidden things, which are a big feature of my books. For example, in The Dark Mountain, the protagonist, Charlotte, suffers an incident when she's a child. Her mother goes out riding with an overseer into the bush and encounters some bushrangers, and something bad happens, and everything after that goes bad. And Charlotte never quite finds out what happened in the bush. So there's this hidden thing at the center of this particular novel. Then the Demon Thief, Theophilus Grey and the Demon Thief. Theophilus Grey is actually a spy in 18th century London, but he also finds himself entangled with this mystery about some strange demon thief, some weird fairy demon that seems to be living in the slums of London. So it's a hidden thing. He deals with hidden things because he's a spy, but there's also this hidden monster as well. And speaking about hidden monsters, the Bogle books are full of hidden monsters. So I like to use hidden things in my books because hidden things are fascinating. And that's why I thought I'd look at a few hidden things in the mountains, though perhaps they're not so much hidden as overlooked or ignored or just hard to find. Down the road in Lawson, for instance, there's a modest little back street called Kangaroo Street, and that's the only indication that there's an ancient artwork in the park nearby. If you go to the rear of the park, you'll find an unsignposted old man kangaroo carving that's thousands of years old. This is the hind leg and the tail is just above it, and then as we move across you'll see the middle of the kangaroo, its body, and then there's a little front leg just there, and then you can just sort of vaguely see the top of its head tipped back a little bit with the little ears on top. Another Aboriginal site that's easily overlooked is down the highway at Hazelbrook, right beside the highway. It's known as the Hazelbrook Wells, and it isn't really understood whether it was a natural formation or created by the Gundungurra and Dargun people, the traditional custodians of the Blue Mountains. Whether man-made or not, they were certainly used for collecting water for centuries, and were apparently even enlarged by crews who built the first road over the mountains. There are supposed to be pickaxe marks, though I couldn't see them myself through all the rubbish. An overgrown path leads from the wells to a nearby rock shelter where an Aboriginal axe was found early last century. Unfortunately, if there was any rock art, it's been pretty much destroyed by graffiti. But the shelter is still profoundly impressive and a natural destination for both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people crossing the mountains. Another innocuous-looking site further down the highway at Lyndon is Bull's Camp Reserve. At first glance, it looks just like an ordinary roadside park with toilets for travellers. Then, when you poke around, you find this beautiful billabong, which suggests it might have been a camping site for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And then if you do your research, you realise that this was an original campsite used by the convict gangs who built the road known as Cox's Road, which was started in 1814 and was the precursor to the Great Western Highway. This wall is supposed to have been made by convicts, though I'm not sure if that's true. On the back, in the scrub, is something called the flogging stone, which is supposed to have been where convicts were whipped. The grooves were meant to ensure that floggers had a secure footing, apparently. Folklore also claims that the tiny cave tucked into the bush nearby was a convict cell, though it's also been identified as a powder store. Most of this stuff probably dates from the 1840s, when Captain Bull was in charge of the Blue Mountains Convict Stockade, which was the last stockade left in New South Wales. He didn't have a reputation for being cruel to convicts, quite the opposite, so I doubt he put convicts in this hole. A bit further down the mountains, tucked away in a very obscure corner of Lyndon, is a headstone commemorating the death of someone called John Donoghue, who died in 1837. It was moved from the original grave site when the highway was widened, but legend has it that it was either a soldier from Bull's camp or a police constable shot by a man named King. It does look as if the original engraving is on the back of the stone. There's a little path near the headstone, and if you go down that, you'll find King's Cave hidden away in the bush. No one knows why it's called King's Cave. Some say it was the haunt of a bushranger named King who shot John Donoghue. Some say it was named after the King's own regiment, the 4th Regiment of Foot, who was stationed in the area in the 1830s, largely to supervise roadworks. Of course, it was probably used by the Gundungurra and Dargun people long before the road crews got here, but since then, a lot of other people have used it as well. You can tell from the graffiti. Somebody was here in 1879 and 1915 and 1931. Close to the cave and the headstone, but still rather hard to find, are the remains of what first brought John Donoghue and Captain Bull and all those convicts up to the Blue Mountains, Cox's Road. A lot of the original road was swallowed up by later roads, but not this bit. This bit is original, right down to the chiselled gutters. Apparently, this was a particularly bad stretch of the road, so bad that detours were built, which is probably why this stretch has remained. It's an incredibly important piece of road in Australian history, but you really have to look for it to find it. These might even be gouges from the underside of carriages, or they might not. Another important Cox's Road site is at the current Blackheath Cemetery, which is right next to the highway, so it's not exactly hidden away. But the highway itself pretty much follows the old line of Cox's Road at this point, and the cemetery itself, although it was founded in the early 20th century, has a little secret tucked away behind it. Right down the back in the bush is a little track leading to a small collection of graves moved from the first Blackheath Cemetery, which was near the railway station. This old cemetery was next to the Blackheath Convict Stockade, which was built in 1844 and was the last one in New South Wales. The convicts who lived at the stockade did road work on the highway, and Captain Bull of Bull's camp was in charge of them. This one was erected for Samuel Jones, who departed this life at Blackheath Stockade in 1845. And here's someone who died at the stockade in 1846. And there are a couple of graves from the 1880s, one of a small child, the other of a man who died at Katoomba coal mine. It really is a hidden gem, almost a secret graveyard. But if you're looking for secret graveyards, you can't go past Mount Victoria Cemetery. It's miles away from the village centre, at the end of a long, bumpy dirt road. But you don't have to go wandering to find hidden things. You can also find them in the garden, like these mushrooms skulking in the shadows. Or these ferns I found growing in a drain. I'll have to dig them out and replant them somewhere more useful because they're very beautiful. Even this unexpected lone cicada coming out at the wrong time of the year gave me a moment of joy. In fact, every time you uncover a little secret like that, it can be an absolute delight. And when it isn't, well, I don't want to talk about that. Maybe I'll write about it instead.